Hello and welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. My name is Serena, and in today's video we are going to be sewing a 1950s inspired applique skirt. I think these applique skirts are so adorable for the holiday season, although they can be worn all year round. I wanted to make a felt skirt so that way I didn't have to hem it and that it would have the structure to hold up and display the appliques perfectly. This will be a part of my little holiday craft series because it did take a little while to put together. So I wanted to introduce this project sooner rather than later so that way you guys can make this skirt if you wanted to, or if you were inspired, and you would have more than enough time to make it for any holiday. I did not make it a Christmas specific skirt, even though that is the holiday that I celebrate. I wanted to make sure that it was perfect for hosting any event now or even later on in the year or even next year. So I decided to go with the theme of a fondue party. I love the cute little fondue, vintage fondue pots. I don't have one yet, but I hope so. So I am putting it out into the universe that I will get one eventually or soon, but until then I will have a perfect fondue party or outfit, and I just think this outfit would be perfect for hosting. I did use a circle skirt pattern that I already had in my collection. I'll just throw up the pattern number, but also as you can see from the photos I have displayed that there are several circle skirt patterns around, and you can also draft one yourself, but you can also use a circle skirt calculator. I'll leave a link for that in the description box below. This is a part of my holiday craft because you can essentially make your own appliques and you can hand sew them onto a sweater, a skirt you already own. You could make your own skirt because circle skirts are really basic. They're just a straight stitch, and if you do make it out of felt, you don't have to hem. So you could glue with fabric glue your pieces, hot glue, whatever you want. So you can turn it from a sewing project to a craft project. So that's why it's in the craft portion or the craft series of my channel. Let's get into the video finally. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at @SewRena_. You can also help support this channel by leaving me a virtual tip on Ko-fi. The link will be in the description box below. And yeah, let's start sewing. For this project, I used 72-inch wide acrylic felt in green for the main fabric of the skirt. And then I used some craft felt that I had in my room for the appliques. I also used seed beads, sequins, and rickrack for trim. I used the Cricut design space to turn my art into a cut file. Then I used the Cricut to make all of my cuts in the felt. Since I have the Cricut Maker, I utilized the rotary tool for precision cuts to bring my design to life. I drew inspiration for my designs from 1950s cookbook illustrations and cartoons. Here's my first character. We'll call her the hostess since she has a tray. I cut all of my pieces out in a puzzle kind of way, so that way they all kind of snap together and it would make it easier for me to reassemble the pieces after they were cut. I have the pieces assembled on a sheet of felt, and I recommend doing this because it makes it to where you can move your applique from your table to your sewing machine without your pieces coming apart. The felt kind of acts sort of like a Velcro and sticks to each other. I was really impressed with how the little details cut so nicely on the Cricut. That's why I didn't want to cut this by hand, because I really wanted the eyebrows and the eyes to be cut out really nicely and crisp, and I think I was able to achieve that. Her tray still needs some sort of food or drink, so I'm gonna do that after the fact. I actually left that to brainstorm a little because I didn't know what I wanted to put on there. I'm also going to use the seed beads to make necklaces and jewelry for my characters, because how can you have a mid-century party without accessories? They definitely complete a look. While we're on the topic of embellishment, I do want to add some rickrack to the collar of this top and the bottom of that collar, so it kind of defines that it's like a rolled collar and gives it that much more definition. Another cool idea would have been to use a decorative stitch on your sewing machine to also give it some detail on that blouse. Next we have our fondue pot. Look how easily it moves as a whole piece on that sheet of felt. That's what I was describing earlier. So I used red for the pot, pink for the cute design on the front. I used diamonds, so it's obvious that it's a mid-century modern design. And I have cheese in this pot. I use the yellow felt, and I use black for the holder and the skewers, and red and yellow for the flame. The cheese was made in several cuts in order to make it so the skewer sits inside of it and it looks more three-dimensional, because I wanted the piece to have some depth and not look so flat. Next we have our last and final character, and I guess we can call her the guest or the gossip. You let me know in the comments below. This is her makeshift skewer. I am going to replace this. This was just a mock-up to get an idea of what I wanted. She is the most simple character. She has a plain black top and she has black hair, and her mouth is supposed to be open. I'm not sure if I want to add a little pink piece to define that her mouth is open, because right now it just looks like she has really full and cute red lips. Her design is simple, but I think she's really important to the piece to show that they are having fun. And I feel like her facial expression and even her hand gives it some movement and happiness. So I really like her character, even though she's super simple. She has a long neck, and I think that will showcase jewelry really well. The pieces will not be to scale, so I'm showing you that now that I purposely made the fondue pot bigger because I wanted to get all of that detail in there, and I thought the detail would have been more difficult to cut if it were smaller, especially because of the cheese. If this were a closed pot, I would have been able to shrink it, but with a full circle skirt, I definitely wanted to take up more space on the skirt since there won't be a ton of guests and furniture and everything like that. I didn't want my characters and cheese or pot to get lost in the skirt and the folds. While the applique is still disassembled, I'm taking the time to add on the necklace. I'm adding 3 beads at a time, then anchoring down the set of beads so that way the necklace doesn't hang and move freely on the applique, and it'll sit tight and in place. Now I am tacking the cheese to the yellow piece. These pieces move way too much for me to risk sewing it on under the sewing machine, so I'm just using a little bit of glue away from where I plan on stitching, so in the center of each of the pieces to keep everything in place. Fabric glue doesn't work well for me on felt. It just never really sticks, so the hot glue is just there so that way I can get it under the machine and then do a zigzag stitch around the perimeter to adhere the appliques permanently to the skirt. So I'm doing the same thing with the fine pieces like the eyebrows, the eyes, and the lips, and then I do go back on the sewing machine and attach all of these details permanently with a zigzag stitch. You do want to avoid sewing through the hot glue because it will leave residue on your needle and that will cause your machine to skip a stitch. So you'll have to replace your needle in order to fix that. Here I am doing a zigzag stitch on the diamond accents of the pot. Now I'm cutting out the skirt. I am cutting it in 2 pieces, the front and the back. This fabric is cut on the fold, and again it's 72 inches wide, so I was able to get a full circle skirt with 2 yards of fabric. Also, because this is felt, you do not need to hem it, so you want to be very careful and precise with your cuts and not have jagged edge. If you have a rotary tool, now's the time to use it. Now I am pinning my appliques and playing with the placement of the appliques. So this was the first placement. I'm definitely going to have to move the characters because while they were straight when it was laying flat, now that it's laying down naturally how it's hanging, the girl on the left where the host is tilted upwards, and I want her to be down towards the pot, so I'm going to have to shift her to the right towards the pot a little. So as you can see she's straight when it's laying flat, but I don't intend on holding my skirt out like this all the time, so I'm gonna have to compromise so that way it looks straight when it's laying naturally. Here I made the adjustments and you can see that she is a little bit more leveled, and when I pull her out, she's up above the pot just a little, but not too bad. So I think this is how we're going to do it. And now you can see her on the right, the guest. She can move closer to the pot, so I will move her a little bit closer so that way they're more centered. But overall, I think it's time to start sewing. So now I'm doing a zigzag stitch on the perimeter of all of the felt. I do have to change the thread a lot to make sure that it matches and blends. I'm using a very small zigzag and I'm just going over the edge. While I did machine stitch most of my appliques, I did go in and sew some of it by hand. Mostly the skin of the appliques I did by hand, but I would say 90% of it was done by machine, and all of the cheese is glued down. I did not bother sewing any of it because I really needed to get that perfectly aligned. The cheese, for whatever reason, wasn't fitting together, and I think that was my fault in the design process. Now I'm sewing up the side seams of the skirt because I want to add some continuous trim, so I wouldn't be able to do that in halves. I did work with my skirt in halves because it made it easier to sew the appliques on underneath the machine, but I've seen people work in a full circle straight away. Now I have a large rickrack. I think this is like large. I don't know exactly the size, but I know you can get rickrack in different sizes, and this is the largest I've ever worked with as a border because I felt like it's a party and it needed something more. So now I am sewing on that black rickrack with a straight stitch underneath the machine. It's really quick and easy to do. I used 2 packs of this, so I'm working with the first pack now, and then I'll go back and sew the back end afterwards. Here's the skirt. I added some drink details to the tray using some beads, and there the characters are all stitched on with their jewelry and looking cute, but I think it needs something more. I just was so dissatisfied with how plain it was because it's just not screaming party. But after this, I decided that I probably should add some sequins, because what is a applique or novelty skirt without some bling and sequins? So here's a quick demo on how I apply my sequins. I just sew a seed bead in the middle to anchor it down and tie a knot behind it, and then just move on to the one beside it. You can leave the thread on or you can cut them and knot them individually. Because I spaced my beads out, I did not leave that long tail in between them. I just cut each one individually and then tied them off and moved on to the next sequin. Thank you so much for joining me while I made this 1950s applique skirt. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something new. Let me know if you give it a try in the comments below, or if you will give it a try. You can leave me a virtual tip if you'd like to support this channel monetarily. Liking and subscribing helps this channel grow. And now for the reveal. Hi, if you made it this far in the video, I wanted to say thank you so much for supporting me, and I also wanted to give you guys a gift, and that is my very wonky drawings and sketches for this applique video. I will put the images on my Ko-fi. They will be free to anyone who stops by over there. I'm not very tech savvy, so I didn't want to sell these. Plus, because it's just going to be the image, you will have to clean it up yourself on the Cricut software and resize it yourself. And if you are going to be doing this by hand, you're going to have to resize it and cut the pieces out and use it as a template that way. Again, if you don't have a Cricut, you can embroider the fine details by hand, like the eyebrows and the eyes and stuff. You're going to have to get a little creative. So I definitely hope you guys will like these images. They're very basic, so don't judge me. And I look forward to seeing what you guys end up doing with the pattern and how you use it in your holiday crafting. So happy hosting. Bye.